There you go. Okay, morning everybody. I feel like the sky was super gloomy to wake up to this crazy morning in Israel. I personally compartmentalized the whole Bibas tragedy until it was absolutely confirmed. I think from a sense of disbelief, and another side from a sense of just trying to cope, with all these with this crazy world, and how it's the same tragedy but just being manifest in the same horror rather, but just being manifest in different ways at different times, and that brings everything up. And then I saw on my Facebook feed a video of Idana Mehdi singing to the Tatzpitaniyot that came back, like the 4 of them and the 5 of them in blankets, and sitting there at some place that he just arrived and surprised them. And then I said, you know what, I'm just going to listen to Idana Mehdi. I like to get out of bed. So I put in my headphones and then just listen to him. He put out this new album called Superman. And it's like, on a day like today, I feel like, his songs that he wrote this album after he was almost killed. He was in that same explosion as I think it was Yakir Hochstein and Schwartz, right? He was the son-in-law of Joseph Gittler. He was in that same explosion of the Handasa Kravit, the what's called like the I can't remember. I don't know how like engineering, whatever, in the field.
Combat engineering.
Engineering. Thanks, Michael. So I think he was in that same explosion, and they brought him in. He's world famous. He's a star founder. He's a celebrity in Israel, and they brought him in, and they wrote on his tag anonymous. Nobody could recognize him. His face was like completely singed, and then he just obviously was out of the scene for a long time, and then he released this album a couple of months ago. I felt like that was the only thing I could really listen to this morning. It's like taking me time to get into it, and to listen to like someone authentically. It felt like the only authentic music in the world. To listen to an Israeli who was fighting, who was injured, who came back from death, just pouring out his heart what everything goes through. There was one scene that also like knocked me out last night. Of these 2 Bibas kids when the mother welcomes in after the baby's born, the mother welcomes in into the house the older son to meet the younger son, and it was like took me right back to the moment of when Ma Yehuda met Eliana, and like softly touched each part, and I just thought of the chokhmah of the and the love and the dedication of the Jewish Israeli mother to every little nuance of their children, and how she had planned, and how she had planned every little nuance of that interaction. Obviously, for months, she had been getting her older child ready for that moment, and then everything was like so choreographed. And I think about that a lot, like lots of Jewish mothers on our group here, but how much investment Jewish mothers and Jewish fathers put into every moment of their children to get them to where they are, and then the sacrifice that we pay. Like how many of those moments went in and then was just rudely ripped from this world through the most horrific, filthy excuses for human beings. And I think that he actually talks about that in his song Superman, where he says how every child that grows up in Israel, everything that they have to go through, and everything they go through at school, and then they go through in the army, and they go through with friendship, and every average kid in Israel has to be a Superman. And this kid was dressed up as Batman, right? So yeah, very, very sad, very sad day. I then looked at what was on the menu for Beit Rav Kook in the morning. This is our Rav cookbook, where we get our good recipes for spirituality every Thursday. So there were 2 options. The one was like the big and small details. We know that Parashat Mishpatim comes after Yitro in an amazing way. That you have this highlight and this apex of the experience of Hashem on Har Sinai, and it's like this huge sound and light show. And then next we look at Parashat Mishpatim, and it starts with Ba'elei Mishpatim Asher Tasim Lifnehem, that these are the statutes. And then you got very, very specific, one of the Parashat with the most amount of mitzvot. You've got all these very, very specific mitzvot that are there, and it's like quite a contrast. On the one hand, you've got this big sun and light show of Har Sinai, and then you've got the very unique, small, specific mitzvot of Parashat Mishpatim. And we already know that what makes Judaism unique is this ability to hold that balance between the big picture and then the small details, and also know that the big picture will not come into fruition in its authentic way if it's not sewn into the very specific details of life and of practice. That's the difference between us serving God and sacrificing our lives for God. It's not just this crazy thing that we put out there and then suddenly we come up with these warped ways of serving that through, killing other people and things like that. That's the difference between us and other religions. I think because we've got these grand visions of godliness and goodness in the world, but it's tied to very, very specific and numerous details that keep it rooted and keep it on the right path. And I think this, in a way, is still true to that. This topic over here. This is like, where does hatred come from? So really interesting on a day when I think it evokes a lot of hatred and anger and rage within us as human beings. But that's not the hatred that it's talking about over here. This is talking about the hatred between people, between Jewish people. Ben Adam Lechavero, and how do we deal with that? And I thought, on the one hand, it seems strange, like we'd want to understand how do we deal with these feelings of rage towards people who aren't Jewish, who've committed such heinous acts of cruelty. On the other hand, we're not going to be able to change them, right? We can't change them ever. What we can do is think about how do we deal with refining those emotions on the Mishpatim level for us between ourselves, so that when we feel that rage within us, we don't use it mistakenly as a way of creating fissures and rage between us as a people, which we sometimes do way too often. Okay, so Parashat Mishpatim is from Rabbi Yochanan Fried, who seems connected directly to this Beit HaRav Kook, and he says the following. בין ההלכות המגוונות והדינים הרבים שבפרשתנו מצאנו עניין בכל אופי ייחודי בסגנון הדברים ובתוכנם. So between all the multifaceted halachot and the many laws that we have in our parsha, we found something, a very unique style within here. בפרשתנו למדנו, so in our parsha we see this law of כי תראה חמור שונאך רובץ תחת מסעו וחדלת מעזוב לו עזוב תעזוב עמו. So if you see this famous one, you see the donkey of someone that you hate is carrying a big load, and it's like falling under its load, and it's struggling. And you need to make sure that if you think you don't want to help him, you got to make sure that you go and help him. Azov milashon azor, right? So if you feel like you're holding back from him because that's your initial reaction to someone that you hate for whatever reason it is, so you hold back from helping him. Azov tazov imo. You've got this double language of making sure that you do go help him. Upiresh Rashi v'chadalta me'azov lo. Rashi says, and you hold back from helping him. It's miyah v'al zeh ba'at tshuva azov tazov imo. So you should help him. So it's saying, Rashi tells us to read the pasuk differently. Not you see the donkey struggling under its load and you hold back from helping him. No, you should certainly help him. Rather, you read it differently. You read it in astonishment. So you say, if you get a person, the person you hate, you see his donkey struggling, can it be that you would think not to help him? Of course, you go help him. Okay, so that's Rashi comes and tells us the right way to read it. So we can ask question here. But is this son aim in the Torah? Who is this hated person the Torah is talking about? The Pashtut medubar b'sina ishit ha'asura kamuvan. So the simple meaning is it's talking about like a personal hatred, which we know is forbidden. The Torah commands us not to give consideration to his emotions and to help him. There could have been an easier way to do it, in theory. Why doesn't the Torah say to the person, don't hate him, and then you'll help him, obviously. Like, stop. If you see someone that you hate, well, don't hate him, and then it's simple that you'll go help him. But rather the Torah only commands that you do actions that are for the good of this hated peer. So we know this famous concept that the Torah doesn't make commands on things that are in our hearts. Can't tell someone how to feel, but you can tell them what to do. When you're talking about things that are in the heart, most of the time that initial feeling certainly is not in the control of the person. Whether you love or hate someone, right? Which can also be debated. There's certainly things we can do to shift our perception and context of someone to change the way we interact with them or feel about them. But the Torah doesn't ask you to do that deep interrogation. Rather, it just tells you to do rather just do actions that testify to love and hatred, right? So actions that would be a manifestation of loving a person, those are the actions you need to do the person even though you hate him. This is in the ambit of the person's authority and control to do as they are commanded. And if you do that, so if you do that, your heart will be pulled after your actions, and you'll do loving actions, and you'll come to love that person. And the famous expression, "Klashon Baal Sefer HaChinuch, achar hamaasim nimshachim halevavot." So the Baal Sefer HaChinuch says, now why is the Torah so focused on the mitzvot and not on the beliefs in a sense? It says after the actions, the hearts are pulled. So if you do loving actions towards someone, the psychology that the Sefer HaChinuch gives us is that do good and you'll feel good towards someone. I think we've all sort of experienced that. And the Rambam, when he talks about the mitzvah of loving a fellow person, he talks about it as such. So there is a mitzvah to love a person, to every person in Israel, like he loves himself. Therefore, you have to talk about a person with praise, and to protect his assets, just like you would protect your own assets, and like you would want the honor of your own honor, so you should honor other people and care for their property. So how does the Rambam come when he's coming to define this mitzvah of avat chavero? He defines it through the actions that you need to do. You need to think about how would you act towards yourself. You act towards yourself with honor. You act towards yourself with self-preservation and caring for your assets. So you should do that for another person. Just like you do for yourself, you should do for the other person like you. So many things are said about this very unique mitzvah. And here are a few different ideas related to this. Reshit, nireh לשנוא את המעשים הרעים שלו ולא את האדם עצמו, שהוא מורכב מטוב ורע. So, firstly, he says the only heter, the only permission that a person has to hate someone, is to hate their actions. Okay? So there's obviously the thing in psychology, separate the person from the actions. Don't say that I hate you, so I hate what you've done. Because a person is made up of this hybrid of good and evil. Yes, in this moment he's sinning, and he does sinful and harmful things, but a person also has good actions. So the Gemara brings why the Jewish people compared to a pomegranate, because even the emptiest of the Jewish people are full of mitzvot, just like a pomegranate is full of seeds. And there's a famous saying in Brachot of Bruria, the wife of Rabbi Meir. She says, no, when you read the pasuk, Yitamu Chata'im min haaretz, then that you may think that you should read it to Tamil Chatim in Aretz. We have to just decimate sinners from the world. She says, no, you need to read it differently. You need to read Tamil Chataim, Velo Chotim. When we think about people that are sinful, we have to destroy their sins from the world. We're a Shaim or Denam, and then there will be no more evil people. It's not because we kill the evil people, it's because we kill and decimate their sins. So he's the Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov and the Magri Mezrich in his Sefer Me'orei Einayim. Just like a person knows of himself that he has certain things that are evil and not good, but at the same time he doesn't nevertheless he doesn't hate himself. So too he should look at his fellow person. Even if he sees evil in another person, don't project that onto his whole personality. Look at it, we always say, once heard a great saying many years ago, it's, that when we look at ourselves, we always look at ourselves with chesed and other people with din. That when you look at yourself, you're like, okay, I did this bad thing, but, there's like a whole context and a whole reason, and it's because this person and that person and I didn't sleep and this and so therefore, I'm not such a bad person. I have chesed. When I look at what someone else does bad, it's like, oh, look at them, they could have chosen all this, but they chose that, and this was their, there's no reason to forgive them, and etc. So it's like we always look at ourselves with chesed and other people with din, and our role in life is really to one second. Is really to sorry, just got a bit distracted. Our role in life is to do the opposite, is to look at ourselves with din and be harsh on ourselves, to improve ourselves, and then from there, and then treat ourselves with din and other people with chesed. That's the thought. Okay, that is the Rabbi Nachman Magbi Chernobyl. Okay, v'lichora besh piresh pasuk ze al derech hadrosh chamor sonecha. So this is a really interesting thing, where the Baal Shem Tov talks about this pasuk of chamor sonecha. So he says it's not about the person that you hate, it's about the donkey that you hate. What does that mean? So he says that we have our body, which is our donkey in a way, right? When we ride our physicality, just like a person rides a physical donkey, in order to get where they need to get to, they've got a thought, like a destination in their conceptual framework of where they want to get to, but they can't get there unless they have a vehicle that's going to get them there. So in the olden days, the donkey was the ultimate expression of that. It's like the animal that walks on all fours, but it's like the lowest to the ground, right? It like bends towards the ground like a horseshoe, and drags its belly. It's like very, very groundy, and it doesn't do anything else other than just schlep things. It's not a horse that can run beautifully and boldly and valiantly through the field. It's not a giraffe that can be a marvel to look at. It's a donkey. You sit on it, it can take a load, and it moves your load for you. So what is our donkey? It's our body. So if we want to do something, our body is what we ride on. Our body is our donkey. You could think for a tzaddik, so we could have the havamina, we could have the thought that we should hate our body, because our body pulls us towards physicality, pulls us towards all our physical needs. So we think maybe we should starve ourselves, right? The way to spirituality is to leave the physical behind and just be spiritual. So we don't speak, we don't drink or eat, very minimally. We've spoken about that before. That's like the monks, right? The heart of spirituality is to be celibate, to not have wine, to have a Tanit Dibur, right, to go into a mountain and not talk to anybody. That's like the heart of Christianity, and we always said before that's like the if heaven and earth is like this line over here, they put the cross right across and say the way to heaven is by cutting off the bottom. We're a Magain David. We stay boosted and grounded in the bottom, and we take the spitz, all the point, we point it upwards. We take the values of Shemaim and we point them downwards. So we this dynamic integration of physical and things. And that's what he says here. In order to strengthen his spirituality, he thinks he has to cut off from the physicality. But the Torah kind of teaches us, Azov ta'azov imo. La'azor legufo lahavriyoto k'dei sheyuchal la'avod et Hashem im gufo. He has to use the chamor to help him. So why does it have two languages of helping? Because the body that you thought was taking you in the wrong direction, you now need to enlist it in your mission of bringing spirituality into the world, and that's what it means. Azov ta'azov imo. Go use that donkey, your body that you hate. Use that chumriut, use that physicality that you think you should be hating, and rather use it with you to ride on it and take you towards spiritual things. So instead of the donkey just being something where it's taking you off to a place of sin, use the donkey to take you off to meet a tzaddik or to go to shul or to go learn, right? And then you're using the physicality to go. Balaturim Omer Sheyeshnei Pamim Rovet b'Masorah. So in our tradition, we've got two languages of Rovet. Mashemur kan Rovet tachat masao. Over here, it's like struggling under his load. Or Rovet al Mishpatim. I'm not so sure of this reference, but he's struggling under the weights. Ula remez yesh kan lirtom et gufo sherovet tachat masao gashmi. You have to heat up your body to like feel this physical load. So when you have to struggle and weary under the judgments, under the teachings, it's the same way, right? You got to like get your body going to be able to carry this spiritual load as well. So in summary, so we learn in the world that there's no such thing that is absolute evil. I had an interesting, okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Talking about this specific paradigm of thinking within our own Jewish world and our own Jewish individual self. What's the paradigm of evil? We can always find evil we can always find the good within it. We can always use it for holiness. To refine the good, and the beloved that is within us. And we're so fortunate we've got this holy and great teacher in our generation, HaRav Kook. He proved in his livelihood, in his liveliness, and in his living, in all of his existence, he didn't have living within him at all. He never had hatred. He was the ultimate epitome of Ahava, Avat Yisrael Mamash. Right? So he was able to take all the forces within him and all the chumriyot that was within him and always use it for love. We know the famous stories about Rav Kook, where he would go dance with the kibbutznikim, where he'd get spat on by like Rav Sonnenfeld's followers, but return to them with love. He was always able to find like a profound, authentic Avat Yisrael. So I think when we're dealing with these very complex emotions of hate and rage towards mortal enemies of Esav, those are in their place. But we can't take that rage and emotion and then go out into the streets and start raging against each other. That would be the worst thing that could happen to the Jewish people. We have to take that, whatever those feelings are, we have to take whatever physicality we have and see how do we use that and align it within the ways of Kedusha. Imagine if everybody took the rage they were feeling and said, I'm feeling so much rage in the world, I need to go do some Ma'asim Tovim, right? I need to come learn Torah, sit together and learn. Let me think of a mitzvah that I can do, and to take Rav Kook's stance of he says that tzadikim atzorim enam koblim ala risha lemosifim tzedek, enam koblim ala choshech lemosifim or. That the true tzadikim don't complain about the evil, they just increase good. They don't complain about the darkness, they increase the light. So halavai that we should be able to do that through our learning and through our being, and please God, not get thrown into their immorality because we become into touching it, but rather increase in our morality and increase in our goodness and in our light as a response to all of their evil. I'm going to post a video on the group. Someone, if you've seen in your Koren, Anne's not on yet to, I guess she wants to join. I should let her. Anne can give me a hard time about doing a punch for my workspace for Koren. But there's one of like the main partners of Koren. If you look at the Siddurim and the Tanachim, there's like the Megaman edition. It's an amazing guy, David Megaman. And I'm working directly with him on one of the digital projects that I'm doing. And he was recently awarded this award by the Algemeiner in the US. It's like a famous magazine and publication. So they do this like very high stakes award ceremony. And he spoke about his response. So he became famous and he was on the news across America because he was a massive donor to Penn. And he pulled his funding at the beginning of the war when he saw their reactions. And he donated more to Bar Ilan and invested heavily in Israel. And he encouraged lots of people to do that. All the donors of these universities that show such evil, he said, you got to move your money out there. And he says, and then he says, I made sure. He says, I stopped putting my money, or he said, I chose not to put any money into combating anti-Semitism. They hate us. There's nothing we're going to do to change them. All we need to do is build our relationship with Hashem. That's what we need to do, and that's where we need to put the money in. And he talks about Hashem in such a natural, amazing way. He's this massive American rich entrepreneur, things like that. So it's just good to have like a direct connection with him. And I'll put his acceptance video. He was asked, who does he want to? They said they'll fly out or bring anybody to be there. Be the person who gives the speech to introduce them at this event. And he had met Rabbi Perez when Rabbi Perez spoke on behalf of the hostages a few months ago at this like UN session. So he went up to Rabbi, he hadn't met him before, he went up to Rabbi Perez afterwards and he said he's amazed by the way he talks about God in such an integrated and contemporary way. That was when they met, and then a couple of months later he called him up and he said, I want you to be my introductory speech. So they flew Rabbi Perez just for a few days to New York to introduce. I don't have that speech yet. I need to ask Rabbi Perez for it. But then so it was like, for me, it was these worlds coming together, which is quite amazing. So I'll send that video. It's really powerful. But we should increase in our love and our connection to Hashem. That's where we need to invest all of our energy. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. May we all get through today and the next few days.
I just want to mention a couple of things if we have time.
Please.
About how it said Rovetz al HaMishpatim. So I looked it up.
Oh, great.
And it's like from the end of Breshit, Perek Memtet. It sounds like it's from Yaakov's Brachot. His kid is about Yisachar. Chamor Garem Rovetz Ben HaMishpatim. It's interesting because it says Mishpatim here with a taf, and in the article it's a tet, so that's interesting.
Wow.
And I was also thinking everything that you were saying about the separating the person from the actions reminds me very much of what we learn about child rearing, because when you're trying to teach a child, you always you separate the person from what they do. Like, you don't label the child and you don't criticize the child. You look at the action that you're trying to correct and you speak about that. So it just reminded me of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to take a lot of our dear chevra in this country to school and educate their inner child to Avat Yisrael. But we need to do it by loving them first, and then, as you say, dealing with their behavior separately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Shabbat
you.
shalom.
Thanks for enriching that, Susan. Okay.
Thank you for
You're
enriching.
welcome. Thank you.
every
Thank you.
week.
See you
Pleasure,
later.
pleasure. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.